Now, while everyone was trying to guess who the killer was online, we're told Kohberger continued to attend classes at WSU less than 8 miles away. He lived at the Steptoe Village Apartments in Pullman. Police were there Friday, and Esther Bauer was there today. She shows us how those who knew Kohberger are reacting and what neighbors at his apartment complex could have missed.
I'm just looking over this timeline again, and it's pretty astounding because he only started as a TA at the end of August. But the problem started right away on September 23rd. Look at this timeline. There are just mere, sometimes, days and short weeks in between each issue.
We also heard something that matched up with your new reporting tonight, that he was a hard grader. That at one point, actually, there was such an issue with the way that he was grading papers that a higher level professor had to come in and get involved at one point.
6 days before Kohberger's sentencing, a gag order that's been in effect was suddenly lifted by Judge Hippler. I've always wanted to know what was going on in the classrooms with the professors and the students. Remember, the student community encountered Kohberger day after day before and after the murders.
One of the things that made it the toughest was the TikTok sleuths. Independent TikTok sleuths and the people who made out the people that I love and know into monsters online. There was some really awful things written on the internet, and it went through all parts of our campus.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Once upon a time, do you remember just how tight-lipped everyone was? This was kind of a gag order before there was a gag order. Virtually no one was talking to the media.
I can tell you that we have 3 different sources where we have put that information together. We reached out to Washington State University. They won't comment on it. It is incredibly quiet and tight-lipped at Washington State University, not just on the administrative side, but also among the students.
So what were the impressions at the time? Now, some of that comes through in this One Night in Idaho documentary, and I've touched on that in a brief intro. I'll go into some more detail. But a lot of the scale and scope of that damage, that sort of psychological damage, is coming to light at last. And with that, we're getting a much deeper sense of Kohberger, how he was affected by the university community, but also how he affected that community in terms of what he did. And you can really get a sense of this tug of war that both sides, Kohberger on the one hand and the student community and even the professor community, really didn't like each other. It was kind of a war that was taking place. And before the murders, it was a war that Kohberger was losing.
This parking lot is always full of cars like it is right now. Neighbors tell me there's a lot of white vehicles and a lot of white Hyundai Elantras that park here. Many are now in shock. Police are saying the person who killed 4 students lived right here.
In an exclusive interview, one of Kohberger's classmates told us that Kohberger was somewhat intense, he was exhausted, but there was a change in his demeanor towards the end of the term. Take a listen.
Bryan seemed like he was on the knife's edge between exhaustion and burnout, and at the time it was extremely difficult to tell which was which. He did become more chatty towards the tail end of the term following the quadruple homicide in Moscow.
But what about the professors? What did they say about him? Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. By the way, in this video, I'm going to be recommending a book that I think would be very helpful to some of you. I've certainly helped me very much, so look out for that. Also, there is a series that I've started on the Chris Watts case where we're reviewing the timeline, and I'll continue to do so chronologically, matching the timeline all the way up to August 13th. I've already posted 2 videos dealing with the timeline. The difference is these videos contain some of my own first-hand visits to that area, so look out for that. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please do hit the thanks button and let's get started.
It's a community of young adults, U.S. and international students at Steptoe Village, who all could have been living next to a killer. Many too scared to go on camera, but telling us Kohberger would come home late. A neighbor says she knew he was home when his headlights flashed through her window, and now people are noticing changes in Kohberger's behavior towards the end of the semester.
And he just didn't look like he was doing great.
And neither is this community, with some families telling 4 News Now they want to move away since Steptoe Village is caught up in the Moscow murder.
So some members of the police have also broken their silence, including this guy, Jenkins. Gary Jenkins is the former Pullman, Washington police chief and current Washington State University police chief. And he was in a unique position to have interactions with Kohberger, interviewed Kohberger, but he was also party to what the staff at the university knew and felt about Kohberger.
So there was a position open in each department.
Why did you feel that BRYAN Kohberger was not the right fit for that position?
So that position really requires someone who can establish trust and rapport with my staff. He didn't communicate in a fluid or conversational manner. He wasn't particularly personable. And so I just didn't feel like he would be able to develop that trust or rapport with my staff, and therefore wouldn't be an effective researcher with us.
According to an article in ABC News, there were a couple of criminal justice professors who oversee that PhD program who felt just like they were responsible because they made the decision to admit him to WSU. I'm a law enforcement professional, Jenkins said. I interviewed him and I couldn't tell you what was to come, and I don't know how they could either. But still, they had a very deep sense of responsibility, feeling like they should have known. Well, shouldn't they? I do think Jenkins can be credited for rejecting Kohberger's application, and for the right reason. He correctly felt that Kohberger didn't have the social skills to fit in, which is an interesting parallel to what I think everyone felt. His classmates, girls, just people in general. You can see he was trying, but you can't blame people for not being more responsive. So who is to blame? I like to think we only have ourselves to blame, because with that mindset, we can alter our realities, we can change, we can improve. We have some power over that aspect. As soon as others are to blame, even if they are to blame, blaming them simply transfers power to them. It takes courage, strength, maturity, and perhaps an X factor to transcend all the rejections and obstacles society may put in one's way, whether fairly or not. I recently finished an excellent book by Bill Gates called Source Code, where precocious and cocky Gates, bullied, too smart for his own good, became something of an outcast. He also struggled to fit in with his society at school and to some extent at college as well. And he quickly found he didn't get along with his own parents at one stage, didn't get really along with girls, or even with some of his teachers. And also realized it was a problem he needed to solve, how to get along with his peers. And so he literally figured out a way to get along with his peers. And because he did, and because he recognized he needed to, he built one of the world's largest and wealthiest companies. He was driven to succeed, but also to succeed socially. And it was a problem that he felt that he needed to solve, and he did. Now, because part of the process when one tries to understand people is also being able to understand yourself, to sell yourself your ideas, new ideas, untested ideas, and that's ultra hard if people are immediately turned off. So how do you turn them on? And that's the question. And so because he learned to work with people and they learned to work with him, all of his ideas found a track to run on. And while we are at this formative stage of our development, at school, at university, but particularly at university, that's a problem we need to solve while we are developing ourselves in terms of our education. And some people fail in this particular aspect of their lives, and it's a lifelong failure. It's something they never learn. But what if one could learn it at some other stage? And so in this respect, I think Bill Gates' story is really illuminating and interesting. Because let's face it, he was very, very different too. Gates succeeded spectacularly. Kohberger failed catastrophically. The difference may lie in how one sees the world and what one takes personal responsibility for, and also how humble or arrogant you are in the process.
Kind of like, we were all annoyed by him. And so I knew his name, I knew like, oh, T.A. Bryan, like he sucks at this. Like he's grading us too harshly. And that was like an annoyance. But obviously beyond that, we just thought he was a little weird and kind of, a bad grader.
So I must say this book really resonated with me because after all, it's even the name Source Code, it's about Bill Gates, how he developed as a person at the school level and college level, and that's the entirety of the story. And his level of recall at those particular stages of his life is truly astonishing.
He was pretty strict as far as grading goes. When he came into class, he was very, not super mentally present. He would stand up at the front, look at the ground. He had a lot of like boilerplate responses he would give people rather than, maybe something he had thought up on the spot. It seemed like he would be, he'd come in knowing what he was going to say to like most interactions. And then when he would grade your papers, he would be grading you on what he ended up calling like a higher standard. But what it really felt like to us was he was grading us like he would have graded himself as a PhD student.
I'm going to take it further than that. I will be covering the Kohberger sentencing hearing. That's live tomorrow. I'll put a link to that at the end of this video. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.